Hello, good afternoon. I just wanted to say thanks to Dan. Uh, we did some photos today after I finished work, and yeah, he did very well. And hopefully, um, hopefully there'll be some good ones in there that one or two may make it into the book, but I'm not really sure if they're appropriate. It's mostly gym stuff and training stuff, but we'll see what happens. Dan's actually flying to Japan, Tokyo, tomorrow. He said he would probably start editing on the plane. He's got a 14-hour flight. And I believe he said he took over 1,000 photos, so hopefully we'll get one or two decent ones. And yeah, I just wanted to thank him for that. I don't know whether he'll see this, but maybe one or two people who know him might, and they'll pass that on. And I also wanted to talk a little bit more about working your ticket in prison. And what I touched on very briefly yesterday was that people are ready to take it as far as they can quite often, and so really you are working your ticket, but the end game is to graft a screw and make them, for want of a better word, a victim of you. I guess over the years I've seen it more often with female officers than male officers, but yeah, it kind of starts with just a friendly bit of interaction, and then it can kind of escalate quite rapidly. And what I've seen quite a lot of is that these prison officers, they don't really understand what they're getting themselves into. And by the time they do understand what they are into, it's too late. There's no way out. And I've seen it countless times. I've actually, to an extent, very briefly involved myself in it as well. Not with a female officer, and it wasn't actually an officer, it was a civilian worker. But when the tobacco ban came in March 2018, then the cost in prison of a half ounce of amber leaf that you could buy on the canteen, I think then they were roughly about a fiver, something like that. And then overnight, for a contraband half ounce of amber leaf, you would literally overnight you'd be paying 60-70 quid for it. And by the time I was thrown out of Coldingley 6 months after the ban came in, tobacco, half ounce of amber leaf was going for 400-500 quid. And I've heard since that, well, I know for a fact that in some prisons, if you've got a 50-gram pouch of amber leaf, you can sell that for £1,000 all day long, and the person who buys it will make 200 very skinny roll-ups from it and sell them for a tenner each and double his money. And that's the business of contraband in prison. So yeah, I spoke to this guy as soon as the ban came in, and the reason I spoke to him was because where I worked was where he was employed as a civilian worker, coming in and out of the prison every day. And I saw a couple of guys having what were clearly covert conversations with him. And I knew a bit about these guys. I knew they were flagrant in the stuff that they were getting up to in the prisons. So later that day, I went to speak to the guy and just said, look, whatever's going on there, obviously, if you're being grafted, I can tell you are. And it's up to you what you do. But I would say you could make a nice drink every week without any real bother and without attracting any real attention if you just bring me tobacco every day. And I said, look, I'm not asking you to do it. I'm asking you to consider it. This is what you can make, and I'll leave it with you. And a couple of days later, he came back to me and he said, yeah, those guys were grafting me and they were trying to get me to bring drugs and phones in and all the rest of it. And I said, well, look, it's simple economics. You'll make more money from doing that without a doubt, but you'll get put in prison for it, and all the money will be gone. So he said, well, I've decided I want to just keep low key, and he started bringing me tobacco, and he got paid at the time. This was just after the ban. I think I was paying him about 35 quid for a half ounce of amber leaf, and I was selling them on for about 60, 70 quid, all in one hit to one person. That one person was then putting his bit on top, and he was happy with what he was making. I didn't do it for long. I think probably about 4 or 5 weeks. And then the guy came to me and said, look, security were all over me when I came in today. They wanted to look at my phone and this and that. And I said, well, okay, well, that's it. Just, we're done. And I'll leave you alone and you'll be fine. As it turns out, and I'd left the prison by this time, I'd moved to another one. Well, I'd been thrown out. So I was in Pentonville. I heard through the grapevine that what had actually happened was that he had decided he didn't want to do tobacco for 20, 30, 40 quid a day. He wanted to do drugs and alcohol for whatever he felt he could make from it. And those two guys that I mentioned previously had got into him. And the inevitable happened. I heard again through the grapevine in Pentonville that he'd been nicked and was looking at a prison sentence for bringing illegal drugs and other contraband into the jail. Greed. I've got the word greed tattooed on my right foot. Just a little reminder to self about the sometimes devastating consequences of being greedy. He could have carried on making a little bit every day from tobacco, and if you get caught bringing it in, it is contraband, but you're not going to prison for it. Anyway, he made his choice and that was the outcome. I realise actually now that not much of that is talking about working your ticket in prison, but it kind of is, and it's kind of just a little bit of information about how starting small with whatever it is, whatever little coup you've got in jail, you start small, and it, one way or another, it soon becomes a runaway train. Other people hear about it because you can't keep your mouth shut, want to get involved, they want a piece of the pie, and all of a sudden it's a fucking shitstorm and everyone's in trouble. The guys who do it in jail in that way, they don't get in any trouble for it. Worst ways, you might get thrown out into another jail, but generally speaking, it's on the victim. they when it comes on top, they suffer, and I've seen it a lot of times. Anyway, hasta la vista. I'll see you later, guys.